Good afternoon. I'm Chuck Brumleve, and I'm here on behalf of the Humboldt Bay Indian community, a federally recognized Indian tribe, direct descendants of the Native Americans who ceded this land to the U.S. government and retained certain land use rights over it. The tribe is and should be interested in any activity which could potentially impact their ceded territory or their rights to a healthy, productive land. But before we even talk of the milling and disposal operation proposed by Kennecott and proposed to be permitted by the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, I think we first have to look at what we're starting with. Kennecott purchased the mill site in September of '08, and in March of this year they filed with the MDEQ a report listing 25 hazardous substances which have migrated or are likely to migrate beyond the boundary of the Humboldt mill site at concentrations that exceed cleanup criteria. This list of contaminants includes 17 metals, 6 organic compounds, plus sulfate and cyanide. All 25 contaminants have been found in the groundwater, and all contaminants are migrating northwest through the aquifer to the aquifer that discharges into the pit lake, which in turn drains north to the adjacent wetlands and the nearby middle branch of the Escanaba River. We can't help but doubt the word of the MDEQ and Kennecott Rio Tinto that the Humboldt mill will not pollute, impair, or destroy the air, water, or resources of this state as required by laws. The Humboldt mill site already violates this requirement before the proposed operations even start. Despite this long list of contaminants, Kennecott has documented as migrating or likely to migrate off-site. The statements made by Kennecott in their mining permit application indicate that they intend to add 2.5 million tons of sulfide mineral tailings waste to the on-site lake and leave the mill site as they found it, despite the off-site migrations of many contaminants. We understand the concept of brownfield sites. I've worked on quite a few. Reuse of industrial sites instead of creating new ones, we're all in favor of that. But inherent to the brownfield concept is that these impacted sites are cleaned up before they are reused for industrial uses. The state should get, and Kennecott should be willing to give, a cleaned up site out of this effort. Contrary to some of the comments and perceptions I've heard just here today, Kennecott states in the Humboldt mining permit application, the goal, and I quote, the goal of the reclamation plan is to retain a site that is consistent with the industrial setting prior to KEMC's operations. It's page 38, section 6, paragraph 1. And further, and I quote again, the final land use of the reclaimed claimed areas of the Humboldt mill site will remain as restricted industrial uses consistent with the pre-KEMC acquisition of the site. Page 38, section 6.2, paragraph 1. Despite the long list of contaminants Kennecott has documented as migrating or likely to migrate off-site, they apparently do not intend to remediate these conditions. Because of this lack of fulfilling these obligations at this site, cleanup obligations at this site over the past 20 years, we have grave concerns about the watershed. The Humboldt mill is located within the Escanaba River watershed. Escanaba River watershed is one of the Upper Peninsula's major watersheds, and any discharge of contaminants from the Humboldt mill site or the pit lake through the surrounding wetlands will ultimately affect the Escanaba River and discharge into Lake Michigan. The Escanaba River watershed already has a number of fish advisories. Add to this the recent news that large areas surrounding the Cleveland Cliffs tailings impoundments, also within the Escanaba River watershed and under the MDEQ's diligent care, are impacted by selenium. It is the MDEQ's responsibility, yea, their obligation, to be guardians of this already impacted watershed, meaning that a very conservative approach is appropriate. I am here today to state that we have not seen this yet in either the design of the Humboldt disposal facility or the issuance of these permits. We agree with the concerns regarding the Humboldt mill proposal voiced by the U.S. EPA and the Fish and Wildlife Service, who have stated the following in writing. EPA stated, "We are concerned that the currently proposed project may have significant adverse impacts on the ecosystem. We object to the issuance of a permit for this project." U.S. Department of Interior Fish and Wildlife Service stated, "After reviewing the Humboldt mining permit application, we request that the MDEQ not issue a permit for the proposed work." There's clearly a lot of work here yet to be done. And if my 1 minute is slowly draining, I will say simply that the tribe, and I believe an awful lot of people, are concerned about the issuance of these permits, and we are against their issuance. There are numerous technical issues involved in this permit. The whole idea of a thermocline and a chemocline that will not mix is fraught with assumptions that cannot be proven and that are likely to be shown to be false. The people that say they need jobs, I can't agree with them more. But I will contend that the state of Michigan and the people of Michigan can have both the environmental purity and a non-degrading industry and have the jobs. It's a falsehood that we think that we have to rush into this because of short time frames and non-negotiation with the company. The previous owners, the Callahan Mining Company, placed phosphate into that pit during the 1990s to get the nickel levels down in order to get their wastewater treatment plant off their back. That nickel is still there. It is sitting there as sediments in the bottom of that lake. It is undetermined, and it's not talked about what will happen to those nickel-laden sediments when tailings start getting spewed on top of them.